Before we start, let's consider why we'd want to run this test. So we're going to be measuring how long it takes an Ethernet frame to ingress and egress various ports on the Nexus router. You can see there are 48 10 gigabit switch ports. Each one of those ports is going to be cabled out to a customer in the co-location site. Let's suppose there were 20 customers, then there'll be 20 ports cabled out to the 20 offices in the co-location site. All those 20 cables will have equal distance so that the transit delay of the cable is identical. So the purpose of this test is to demonstrate the latency of the Nexus router, but also that more importantly, that the distribution of the latency is more or less equal across all of the ports on the router. What we don't want is a port pair, for example, being faster than all the rest, because the attached customers will be running their own APIs measuring the transit delay in nanoseconds, and they will soon complain if they find that the delay has suddenly gone up or lower. Well, not lower, but gone up. But the purpose of this is to make sure that there is fairness on the ingress and egress of the packets going through the switch. Right, let's get on with it.
There is plenty of obscure financial jargon to navigate on any given day of investing. We are here to help, though, with a feature we call Bob's Buzzword.
Right. It refers to the opportunity that's created by the fact that some professional traders are getting market pricing and availability of publicly traded stocks before others. And so the difference between the first guy to get it and the last guy to get it is called the latency.
So before we get into how this arbitrage works, I mean, how can certain firms have prices before others?
Right. This is a really interesting thing, and it's a result of kind of a technology arms war that's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years. Right now, it really focuses on getting close as you can to the exchange's server. You want your trading company server right next to the exchange server, because each foot is equal to a nanosecond. So quite literally, if you're 10 feet away, you're 10 nanoseconds behind the guy who's right next to it. And just a few nanoseconds can really make a difference.
Sure, we know there's actually a big site being built out in New Jersey for co-location next to the New York Stock Exchange.
So it's become a big business for the exchanges to license out, to rent out the co-location space.
I included that little clip just to give some background and context to the test we're about to do. So without further ado, we're going to start with the video proper. Comes in a couple of parts. The first part is to prepare the Spirent TestCenter for the test, and then we connect to the Nexus and then run the tests. So I've got 8 10 gigabit ports on the test center, so I've got to check 8 times on the traffic generators that the timestamp latch mode is at the start of the frame. I have had times where a previous wizard has set this to the end of frame, so you're going to make sure that it's set to the start of frame. Now, enable port offset. Spirent by default will artificially delay transmission of a packet, and as you can see there, 110 nanoseconds is put in by default. Because we're measuring below that, we have to take that out. So we have to go to settings, physical options, and enable port latency compensation for adjustments. And then what we'll do, apply that, and then it'll add some extra columns to the port screen, and what we'll be doing is looping back all the test ports actually, and getting rid of the latency that's shown. So you can see the compensation mode is removed. So shall be left as removed. And then you've got transmit and receive offsets. It doesn't matter which one you set. I tend to use the transmit offset. Now you can do that individually. Here, go to the port, and then you can see the latency compensation. It's the same setting. I prefer doing it on all ports, and you can see everything there in one go. So we need to get rid of the propagation delay of the cable we're going to use, otherwise that will give us a false report. This is just a bit of fun really. Copper, notice per meter it's 5.4 nanoseconds, and so on. I've measured it for the single mode and multi-mode there, and you can see there's a difference. Multi-mode is somewhat slower. Okay, so now we're going to loop back the tester ports. So we use the same length of cable, that's important, and loop back transmit to receive on each of the tester ports that you're using. And then what we're going to do is send a raw stream block, I'll show you that in a minute, and measure the time around, and we make it go to 0. So a raw stream block, go to traffic generator and then add raw stream block. I found that a larger size frame is better for it to measure than the smaller frame. Just going to leave that at 10% or maybe 50%. And because I've got 8 ports, I'm going to have to do this on all of the ports, so we'll speed things up a bit now, just to using the magic of television, we can do this pretty quick. So what we'll be actually doing is transmitting from one port, transmit to its own receive port, and then we're going to negate the propagation delayed by the cable. So we start the traffic and adjust close to 0. So port A's got green, and we're going to start the traffic. So on the detailed stream results, we're going to be looking at the average latency in microseconds. So I'm going to use transmit on port A first of all, and then try and zero that out as best I can, and then go to B, then C, and so on. This is a good example on port G. You can see that my average latency is 12 nanoseconds, or 0.12 microseconds. So that's a bit high, so I'm going to go to G, and I'm going to add in an offset of about -10 nanoseconds, and then apply that, and then that should go down to 2 microseconds. So I'm going to go to apply, and then that will get the tester to add that in, and then zero the counter there, and then you can see now it's 0.02, so it's 2 nanoseconds, which is very, very good. And then I think we're going to take a quick look at H and set traffic running on H. Okay, set traffic running, and we can see that it's already at 0.06, just zero the counter, and 0.0. So in this particular case, there's no need to add any offset. It's pretty damn close. Right, now we get to connect Spirent to the Nexus device under test. So this is the Nexus 3548, and there's 48 10 gigabit ports, and in a trading floor each one of these ports would be for a particular customer. So what we're after is that the latency distributed across the 3548 is pretty much equal, so there's no advantage given to one particular customer on the stock exchange. This illustrates my 8 ports from the Spirent going into the Nexus And now we must delete all the raw stream blocks we did before and then create some layer 3 stream blocks. This is a photo of the actual 3548 with the cables connected into it. So let's configure some test streams. What we're about to do here is configure some layer 3 test streams, and I'll put them into port pairs. So port A will be transmitting to port B, and port B will be transmitting to port A. So they're paired off. So each IP subnet pair will be within the same prefix. So I'm running at 50% load and 1200 bytes in each frame length. Just to give some perspective to all of this, if you blink your eyes, it's about 300 milliseconds. 1 millisecond is 1 second, as we all know, sliced into 1,000 pieces. A microsecond is 1 second sliced into 1,000,000 pieces. And a nanosecond, which is what we're talking about here, is 1 second sliced into 1,000 million pieces. So it's incredibly small value we're measuring here. There's something here which you have to be careful of. If you transmit 2 packets at the same time, you'll get this serialization or latency. And this is something that occurred while I was running these tests, and I thought there was a problem, and it's not. It's just the way the physics of the switch is. Not the switch, but the nature itself. So what we have to be mindful is here is, if I leave the default in the Spirent, the traffic gets transmitted at the same time. So here comes 2 packets at the same time, and they hit the egress queue on the Nexus or any other device. So one has to go before the other. So there's going to be a wait of a certain amount of time, which I've forgotten, but you'll get the idea. So one goes out through the egress port, and then the next one comes in. So you'll have this kind of delay, which really is not part of Cisco or anyone else. It's just the way nature is. So what we have to do is make sure that we transmit in each packet with a slight delay. So they can see now the first packet is already on its way out before the second packet gets into it. And then this gives us a much more realistic view. So to do that, we have to set the Spirent to set traffic to async. So we go into Spirent and we go into settings, and then we move over to the right and pick up traffic, and the port send mode, send this to asynchronous, and put 1 in there, and that will give you a delay of 64 microseconds. What we're trying to do here is ensure there is fairness across all of the 8 tester ports, and for us to do this we have to put the analyzer into histogram mode and adjust the histogram settings. And here you can see with a range of about from 215 nanoseconds up to 245 there. You can see the majority of the traffic is being arrived in the 245 to 265 nanosecond buckets. So the rows are from A to H, which is port 1 to port 8, and the distribution of the packets arriving are shown in those individual cells. So we have to go into the Spirent and adjust the histogram so that it's refined for this particular test. The defaults that Spirent provide are too wide, and everything would appear in one bucket. So to go ahead and do this, we have to go to into ports, and we go into the traffic analyzer, and then we have to say click on the histogram, and then we change the settings to histogram mode, make it centered, for the measurements for the distribution, and then make a unified bucket size width of 20, and then down below in the table there it will show us the showing the center point is 270 nanoseconds, and then this is showing us the distribution of the measurement, and that should reflect down onto the actual measurement in that window there. What we're after is that all the packets arriving within a couple of these columns. If there was bias to one particular side, it would show up here. This is very important so that we can show there is evenness and distribution for each customer. So we can run the test manually, or we can run it with a wizard. We're going to run it manually first of all. So moving my display down. And there's my 8 ports. Nothing's arrived yet, and I start the traffic. Notice I'm on detailed stream results on histograms. So this is the traffic arriving, and this is actually just showing basic counters and the average latency and so on. Okay, so we need to go to the histogram mode to see the distribution. There we go. So what we're after really is all of those 8 ports, the packets arriving within a small amount of time. You can see there's some early takers there, and then between 245 and 265 nanoseconds, most of the traffic's there. For some reason, port 8 is a little bit low, a bit out there, a bit slower. So I'm going to do a calculation here. So I'm taking 295 and then taking the difference, the delta, 225, and we have a difference of 70 nanoseconds. Or being realistic, 285 by 235, 50 nanoseconds. Because you may get the odd packet, but we're after statistically the majority of the packets arriving there. And this shows you the minimum and maximum latency. Okay, so that's run manually. We can also run it with a wizard. This is the wizard, the RFC 2544. Gathers together, if you like that, gathers together all the information and puts it into a report, which is much more digestible, and it will do it by packet size. So whereas before I had a fixed packet size doing it manually, with the RFC 2544 you can run a test and it will automatically do it by packet size. So this would go to the wizards, which is up on the top bar of the Spirent TestCenter. I'm just going to do a latency test, and then say next, and this will pick up what packet sizes I'm interested. Well, first of all, what ports I want to run the test on. I want all of these ports, all 8. So I'll select all, and then next, and then again select all of these. This is the endpoints. So shift click on next. And now I'm going to use the existing traffic flows I've already created by selecting that particular button there. Again, I want them all, so select all, shift click, and then next, this really defines how the test starts and stops, so to measure jitter as well. And save detailed stream results, very important. And then I'm going to do it for this particular test, run for 60 seconds and go for a bandwidth load. of percentage of the port speed, which is 10 gigabits, at 10, 50, 90, and 100% of the port, and go for these particular packet sizes. So it will do 64, run all the tests at 10, 50, 60, 100, and then move on to 128 and so on. And when you finish with this, it will go and run it, and when you finish with this, it will provide in the detailed stream results, sorry, in the detailed reports, not the stream results, there's a report, and it'll give you a nice tabulated report, which you can stick into Excel and PDF and so on. This is the wizard running at the moment. There's the results coming up, and this is the results showing you warp mode on and warp mode off. What is warp mode? Well, the 3548, you can put it into like an accelerated mode with warp on, and it gives you faster latency across the switch. Thank you very much. This is Peter O'Reilly, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.